Blockading Hormuz proves an ineffective move if the United States is willing to counter Iran's provocations. This means Iran is more likely to respond with low-intensity, deniable warfare by utilizing cyber warfare and its deep roster of malicious and terrorist groups. Be it Lebanon's Hezbollah, Gaza's Hamas, or Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, the Ayatollah is likely to call upon these players long before seriously considering closing the Strait of Hormuz. Hezbollah, in particular, is among the most well-connected of terrorist groups in the world, possessing links with Central and South American drug cartels. A worst-case scenario would involve Hezbollah exploiting these connections to carry out terrorism on American soil. At the very least, it can be expected that Iranian-backed militias like the PMU can be used to attack U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq and Syria as the anti-ISIL campaign continues. This would force the United States or coalition to contemplate escalating their involvement in the multiple civil wars in the region, or, to their obvious detriment, refrain from retaliation. President of Iran Hassan Rouhani threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz in response to potential sanctions that could be levied upon Iranian oil exports, threats which were echoed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. President Donald Trump has given countries until November 4, 2018, to stop importing petroleum from Iran. This wide-scale ban is part of a new campaign of confrontation and pressure against the Islamic Republic. This demand comes on the heels of the U.S. departure from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, which was signed in 2015. During negotiations, the JCPOA was marketed as the only option for curtailing Iran's nuclear program short of war. Supporters of the deal routinely cited an increased risk of war in their arguments against exiting the deal, and Rouhani's statement, on the surface, appears to confirm such concerns. Iran threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz is nothing new. The Obama administration had its own confrontation with Iran over the latter's nuclear program. Iran threatened to close the strait and carried out military exercises in the area, drawing a major United States, British, and French deployment in response. But a year later, both sides resorted to negotiations that led to the JCPOA. In 2008, the commander of the IRGC, Mohammad Ali Jafari, threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation. During the 1980-88 Iran-Iraq War, both sides targeted one another's shipping as part of a total war effort, raising fears that Iran might attempt to make the Strait of Hormuz impassable. Iran used mines as part of its strategy, eliciting an operation to safeguard Kuwaiti shipping, codenamed Operation Earnest Will. Beginning in summer 1987, it lasted over a year and a half and involved increasingly direct combat between the United States and Iran, culminating in Operation Praying Mantis in spring 1988. In the one-day air naval battle, the United States scored a decisive victory, with Iran losing several warships during the exchange, while inflicting no losses in return. Apart from the events that took place from 1987-88, none of these incidents resulted in open warfare. This is nothing short of remarkable, given the unrelenting level of hostility exhibited on both sides since the November 4, 1979, seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. While the lack of actual fighting can be attributed to restraint and professional crisis management skills on the part of the United States, it can also be attributed to the fact that Iranian behavior and rhetoric regarding the strait primarily serves as a means of crisis management, albeit a dangerous one, and a political purpose. Closing the Strait of Hormuz has a regressive impact on Iran's interests. 85% of Iran's imports come through the strait, and the oil exports so crucial to the Iranian government's solvency mostly flow out of it. Iran would be cutting off its own lifeline if it closed the strait, and it would have to live on its already dwindling currency reserves. Iran would also be inviting attacks on its own oil facilities by vengeful neighbors, and it would isolate itself internationally. In contemplating any Strait of Hormuz closure scenario, it should immediately be noted such a move by Iran amounts to one of desperation, employed only in a situation in which Tehran sees no other way out of its predicament. Therefore, a strait closure is unlikely. The United States is well aware of this, and the Iranian leadership probably realizes Washington can call its bluff anytime. By threatening to close the vital waterway linking the oil-rich Persian Gulf with the world, through which approximately a third of the world's petroleum is ferried, Iran stokes fears of war and economic crisis. This not only raises gas prices in anticipation of supply disruptions, but it also influences world opinion towards the direction of de-escalation, which would pressure the United States to back away from its own red lines. Given the number of countries that rely on Middle Eastern oil, including that of Iran, Tehran can craft a damning narrative that shows that the United States is generating a crisis to the world's detriment. While the United States has the capability to prevent a closure or reopen the strait, the physical and political costs of such an undertaking are considerable. Assuming Iran would attempt a closure only when it feels it has no other recourse, it would then have little to lose from doing so, while the United States and the world would bear costs not easily recouped nor as readily borne in comparison. Iran's closure of the strait would not involve employing its naval forces to physically occupy the waterways in a conventional sense. Rather, it would make the strait impassable utilizing an anti-access or area denial strategy, A2 or AD strategy. For Iran, mines would form the centerpiece of this strategy to turn the choke point into a no-go zone. Afterwards, it can use land-based anti-ship missiles, ASMs, to prevent clearance operations or to directly target enemy warships and civilian shipping. The ability of the United States and its allies to reopen the Strait of Hormuz comes down to preparation. Should advance warning be received of an impending closure attempt, the forces of Central Command, CENTCOM, would mobilize naval forces, particularly one or more aircraft carrier strike groups would be rushed to region to force Iran to alter its calculations or to intervene before it makes much progress in making the waterways impassable.